Hey there, my name's Kuei. I am a solo software developer just building small, useful tools, mainly for myself, but hopefully for others that are interested. So, what I want to introduce today is a small Chrome extension color picker called Pix that I am wrapping up now that hopefully will launch in the next week or so. But I feel like I'm at the point where it's pretty far along, and I don't think much will change from here on out besides some code cleanup and whatnot. So goals for this video are to first of all show Pix the app itself, and also I want to show you my thought process behind making this product. My general process with design and development is to just start. I have an idea and I just start riffing on it, and I'm building everything in code. So there's no specs, no design. I'm not doing anything outside of writing code. In this case, this is truly just a very basic app that is HTML, CSS, and JS. There's no framework behind it, either on the front end or back end. It's just ends up being a couple files for the Chrome extension itself with a manifest.json file, and then this page here, which is like the marketing site for Pix that I'll show you. That is just straight HTML, CSS, JS, nothing fancy, no plugins, no libraries, no frameworks, nothing. Okay, so um, I think what I'll do is I will first just talk about Pix itself, show you how it works, and then get into this demo site, which presents Pix, and talk a little bit about how I went through that design, because in some ways this was even more interesting than the product itself, or at least actually equally as interesting. And then I want to show you some earlier iterations as well. There are actually a ton of earlier iterations, but I want to show you like two that were pretty recent and at that point pretty well formed. Some of the earlier stuff was sort of way different, but these ones at least will give you a taste of like some of the design decisions and the aesthetics and the things I did consider as I got to this final place. Okay, so I will start by actually just showing you the app, and I'm going to do that through the Pix. I'll call this the Pix marketing site, because the way I designed this site was to basically have the extension, the little pop-up inside of the this page, so that folks that obviously haven't installed it yet can try it out before they decide to install it. So the way that works is you're on the site now, and I'll just hit try it out. This pops up this fictitious little Chrome browser, and here's where it will be if you install it and you pin the Pix to your browser. So I'm just going to start. I'll kind of go through this tutorial a number of times because I want to talk about some of the design considerations of this actual tutorial as well. But let me just kind of go fairly quickly so you get a sense of how this thing works. So if you want to pick a color on your screen, let me actually talk about why I built this. I found it very difficult, or it should be a lot easier just to get a hex color or RGB or some other format from a pixel on your screen. Right now, what I do is I will go to like Chrome Inspector, got to pull that up, got to figure out a way to get the little color grabber, pick it, and then I still have to copy it. And then if I want to change it to a different format, there's like the little drop down, and just the whole thing just takes way too long. And I want it to be really quick and easy. I've tried some other Chrome extensions as well, and I still have the same problem where I just feel like I'm doing too many things. It's too many steps just to get something on my clipboard. So, really, the focus of this was how quickly can I get the color on my clipboard. And so that's what this product is. So let's go through it. So it starts by clicking on the Pix icon here, and you can see that it unveils this little interface here, this little pop-up. And the next step is to hit spacebar. So spacebar is the thing that always opens your color picker. So now I've got the color picker ready. So you can see in this tutorial, I conveniently made this nice rainbowy background, so you can kind of decide what type of color you want. Let's pick something here in this blue-purple range. I click it. By the way, this comes up. I'll have to figure out how to hide this, but it sometimes comes up randomly when I'm using the eyedropper. But once I've done that, now that color has been copied. So if I hit A, this changes the format, and every time I'm hitting A, you can see that the color is changing. So anything that you're seeing up here is the new copied color, whatever that is. So it's in a hex form, RGB, HSL, and so forth. I just hit A if I want to change the format. And again, I don't have to do anything else. I've got the color already in my clipboard. I just change it to cycle through different formats, and whatever the latest one is the one that's copied. The other thing I've added is the ability to add or not have a semicolon. I often, when I'm writing front-end code, I just want to have like the color itself with a semicolon, because I like in my CSS, the color, and I just want to paste it in or highlight the old color, and I don't want to be have to finesse through and not highlight the semicolon at the end. I just want to highlight the whole thing from left to right and then just paste in my new color. And so oftentimes I will want the semicolon already in the clipboard. So you can do that just by hitting F. You can also hit semicolon here as well. That works, but F is the one I use. And you'll notice here, you'll see the little A, S, D, F, G. The idea here, this gets me to another point, is I'm really much getting into software like ergonomics. I really like the idea of thinking about how someone's going to use this with their hands. So in this case, you're going to have presumably your right hand is going to be on your mouse, moving around, picking the color. Your left hand would be on your home row, so ASDF with your 4 fingers, your thumb near your space bar. And if you do it that way, then these little actions become super easy. And as you can see in the beginning here, I talk about flow. So one of the goals here was like, let's keep the developer, the designer in flow. When they're writing code, they just want a color, they can come in here. So I'll start this up again. I've got my mouse on my right hand, I'm clicking this, and then I'm hitting spacebar and I'm picking color, and that's it. Like 3 little quick steps. My hands are where they should be, and I get the color I want. And again, cycle through the formats with A. Again, I'm just hitting my pinky. F for the semicolon. You can see the semicolon comes in and out, and this is just showing you what's being copied to the clipboard. And if I want to remove that color, I don't like it, I just hit G, which is the same as a trash can. Of course, I can hit any of these buttons as well, but if you stay on your home keys, you just move your pinky over to G, and that deletes the color. I was strategic about making the delete button the G, because your fingers are going to be on your home row keys. The G is going to require just that slight move with your pointer finger from the F to the G. And instead of having like a hotkey where you click it and then it says like, are you sure you want to delete this color? I'd rather you just not have to do that like confirmation step. And instead, because you have to move your finger a little bit, that's kind of the confirmation step. Like you shouldn't accidentally delete a color because you have to move your finger a little bit out of the way to make that action happen. Okay, so now let's build a palette of colors. So kind of like step 1 of picks is, let's make it super easy to just pick a color. You can see it's really quick. It's just space bar, pick, and you're done. There's the RGB color. But if I want to build a palette of colors, I can continue to move around on whatever site I'm at and just pick these different colors. So I'll build this little palette here. You can see I've also made this little thing here. It says space. This is supposed to look like a space bar, just so that in your head, when you're actually using the Pix app itself outside of this little tutorial, where it would live right on the browser, you'll know, okay, space bar means the color picker. So space bar means the color picker. You can see that when you hit space bar, now it changes from space to pick. And just so like you've got that visual cue of what you need to do to enact the color picker. Okay, so I'm doing that. Got a bunch of colors in it. I limit it to 7. Once you hit more than 7, the last one, the oldest color just falls off the queue. I just assume most people will not need that many colors in the palette if they're trying to build some sort of palette. Could be wrong about that, but that's what I'm going with for now. Okay, so I've got these colors set up. Now what else can I do? Well, I can cycle through my palette. So I can, right now you can see that the last color I picked is always the one that's going to have its color copied to the clipboard. So you can see last one. But I can also go back, and now that I've got this palette, I can go move around and do this. But I can also hit S and D. So actually in this case, I click the individual swatches with my mouse, but I can go S and D here. You can see S goes backwards, D goes forwards. And again, these are all home row keys. So let me start over again. If I kind of do this, let's go through all the steps here. A, F, G. All right, let me build the color palette again with a few colors. Now I can just, without moving my fingers off my home row keys, I can get to the other colors as well. So A, S, D, F, G does all of the features that are around just the colors themselves, the individual colors themselves, going left and right through them, changing the format with A, adding or removing the semicolon with F, and then deleting. So with G, I can start to delete some of these as well. But it's all just through the home row keys. I don't have to move my fingers. Because now we get to like the, I guess the more the advanced features of Pix, which are, number one, you can take a gradient, a linear gradient of your palette. So let me start over here. Let's do G. So let's say I want to have like just blue into red into yellow, something like that. And I want to have this little gradient here. So I just hit this button here with my mouse, and this gives me this gradient. So it's a linear gradient that defaults to 90 degrees. This is already on your clipboard. And I decided that just by default, I would make the linear gradient 90 degrees, so it's going left to right, and it's going to equally space the colors. So if you have 3 colors, it'll show it at all equidistant, so 0, 50%, 100%. Let me do a few more here. Let's add a few more, and then let's also do the gradient. You can see now I've got like 6 colors here. It's just equally spacing all of those colors. It shows you a little swatch of what that's going to look like. Obviously, you can change this to radial gradient. You can change the degrees. Many apps will do that in the app itself. I just find that that's more than I need with the app. I'd rather just paste that in code, and I am accustomed to tweaking that stuff inside of CSS. So I'll know if I want to change the angle of that. I can change the degrees. I can change the linear gradient to a radial gradient, etc. But I'd rather, the key here is I'm just trying to get the starter gradient code with the colors on my clipboard. I go right into my text editor, paste it in, and I can do those manipulations just manually without having to bloat the interface here. Okay, so then the next thing you can do with this palette of colors is I can hit this button and it'll just give me all these colors in variable form. So oftentimes when I'm writing code, I'll have like a root in my CSS where I list out a bunch of color variables. And so by default, I'm just calling them colors 0 through n being the number of colors in your palette. I might evolve this a little bit. I know there's some standards maybe around Tailwind or other standards in terms of naming colors, primary, secondary, all of that. But for now, just 0 through 6, or 0 through n rather. And then this is going to copy to your clipboard, and you paste this into your CSS, and then you can kind of manually manipulate what you want to call those variables. Okay, and the final thing you're able to do is save this palette. So let's say I really like this palette, I want to reuse it over and over. I'm going to click this, and then this instantly saves it into this little palette library. This is the first one on the list here, but you can then change the name of this. By default, it will just come up with a catchy name. There's maybe like 30 or 40 different names it picks from that are just, I don't know, just fun little names, but you can change this to whatever you want. Let's call this Rainbow Palette. Save that, or it's automatically saved rather, and then I can just show hide the palette. You can see as I've gone through all of these, the tutorial is giving me feedback, telling me that I've done a good job and I'm getting through learning about Pix. Some of the other things you can do just to show you, if I delete, you'll see that I don't have a color selected here. So if I hit delete now, or if I hit G, now it gives me a confirmation that just says, do you want to delete the entire palette? So if I were to individually click a palette color, I can do that again with S and D, or pick the actual color, and then I hit G or hit this button, it's going to just delete that color. But if I do something like I copy all of them, see that nice little flourish there when I do that, or if I do the gradient, it's just kind of resetting. There's no selected color at this point because your last action was something about the entire palette. But then when I hit G, I can just delete the entire palette. It does give me the alert there, just because that's kind of a big thing I don't want people to accidentally do. So there we go. Now we're back to the beginning. Now, I can go ahead and pick some different colors here. Let's see, I have a new, let's call this like the fall palette. So hits, I'll hit the save button. You can see that the rainbow palette's still there. I'll call this fall palette. Hit enter, and that's saved there. So now, let's say I want to go back and I want to actually use the rainbow palette instead. I just go over the actual palette colors. You can see this little arrow pops up. I click this, and you can see now I've loaded up the old palette. I can make any changes I want. I can click this, hit G to delete, but it's not affecting the rainbow palette. This is just a straight copy of that palette. I can then go ahead and save it and have another palette. It's really easy. The idea here is just to let you develop palettes, not have to like rebuild colors all the time. And of course, I can go ahead and delete these palettes as well. Get this back down to 0. So that's that. Now, on this demo, when I refresh the page, all the things that are in memory go away. It'll start fresh. In the real actual extension up here, these will be saved just through local storage, so you don't lose them when you come back to it later. So that's a little bit of difference here. That way, when I refresh this, you're kind of starting from scratch, and the tutorial makes sense. Okay, so that's Pix, the app, as seen through the tutorial itself. Let me talk a little bit about the tutorial, about how that evolved, and also show you some old iterations of the Pix extension itself. So when I originally designed this site, I did want to, early on, I felt like I wanted to have this kind of internal browser within a browser idea. That was kind of interesting, sort of memorable. So it was fun building out this little Chrome kind of mock-up. This is all straight CSS. This is the only image I have here. So one of the things I like to do when I'm doing these kind of fun things is just have a little fun, like kind of have a little Easter eggs here and there. So one of them is the idea of having these different folder bookmarks. So if you refresh, you see there's just different like little fun things. I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s, so you know, when I was in college, that's when the internet, sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, really started to become a thing, and there are all these memories I have that I kind of wanted to relive through here. RSS readers, GeoCities, Friendster, etc., and just silly things like this copy of New Folder 2 that we've all done. So just want to have little fun things that you may pick up on or not, doesn't matter. So some of the other things I thought about were this background. So I wanted this background to be colorful because I wanted the experience to be that you would kind of use this as a mock page that you typically might want to pick a color from. And before I had this just straight gradient rainbow, I actually had some pictures I wanted to use, like that I got from other folks, like common license pictures, or like I even had Google Gemini generate some images that were just really cool, like vibey images back that you could pick color from. When I tried that, what I didn't like was it felt like it just grabbed your attention in a way that took away from the actual point of this tutorial, where it was like, yes, it's cool, but it didn't really, it just got in the way. So I took that out and just went with a straight gradient, which I like a lot better. And then so through that iteration, I just needed to figure out a way to like step through this process, because one of the hard things about designing any kind of tutorial or wizard is I don't know, I personally don't like using them. They're boring, you know. They're just it's like I have a tendency to want to just look at the app and play with it right away. So but at the same time, I felt like it was a good place for people that are not like me to quickly learn the product. So I developed this little tutorial idea where it's kind of guiding you. And as I iterated through the code, it turns out that, you know, I can skip steps here, right? I could pick a color here, and then I can skip A and just go right to F. And you can see like it then kind of gives me that feedback that I've done these other steps, but it always highlights the earliest one that you haven't done yet. A lot of edge cases can happen here where things get kind of kooky, but for the most part, as I iterated through it, it felt pretty natural. Like I can even build a palette of colors. But still, once I finally hit A, this one goes away, and then like the next one on this list that hasn't been checked off comes up. Again, there's a few little edge case scenarios here where things get a little wonky, but you kind of really have to try to make it to break it, I guess. And there's always a point, earlier in my career, I was very obsessed with handling every single edge case, to the point where it got a little obsessive. Like things that just would never happen, I would worry about. In my later years, I just sort of I'm trying to get it to the point where pretty much if you're going to do something and get it to the point where it gets a little wonky, fine. Obviously that you have to weigh what we're talking about here. I'm talking about a color picker on the front end. It doesn't really matter. Obviously, other things would matter. In this case, it doesn't. So I try to be a little judicious about how much time I'm spending on fleshing out every edge case. I think it feels pretty good, where it's at right now. Again, probably a few cracks in here where you can kind of get into weird states, but overall, it feels pretty polished. I want to show you an early iteration of the tutorial. I did keep this little Twitter or X thread just because I find it hard for me to go back to old versions and like figure out a way to like have a history of my work. So I thought it'd be kind of fun just to post things on X periodically. This is the original version of that tutorial that you see now. You can see nothing's changed much here. This did change dramatically from where it is. So you can see this is just like a straight, like it started out as just a typical ULLI format with a little bit of styling. I knew it was kind of rough, but I wanted to make it feel right. And sometimes you just go at it. I started to tweak some of the gradient stuff because this is a color picker. I thought let's really emphasize colors and gradients here. So you can see that there's all this sort of gradient effect on it. These little rows now kind of feel almost like a peacock or like a wing. And so then I played around with this idea of rotating each one. I played a little bit with perspective, or you can do some of the 3D newer stuff with CSS, but that got a little too weird. So this is actually, none of this is using anything like perspectives. It's just straight rotations. But it's just enough where it kind of feels like there's some dimension to it. So I kind of like where this landed here. Again, this sort of like wing thing. I don't know. There's something about the rainbow and the wing that makes me feel like I'm floating in space or something like that. Just it felt right. And then an earlier iteration I had of this, when you go through these steps, I had this green little success thing happening over here on the right. And so as you went through these things, it got real busy over here. There's a lot of green stuff. So then I ended up flipping it and moving the success stuff over to the left. And what's nice about this is sort of one of those like happy little accidents is because I have that rotation of these rows kind of leaning in this curve towards the right, it really makes sense actually to have the success feedback on the left, because it gives the entire screen this nice balance. So like as you're finishing up the tutorial, in a weird way, the thing kind of like centers itself again, because there's sort of there's as much weight on the left as there is on the right. This is not something I planned. It's just something, I think a lot of good design just comes through playing it around with it, just trying something new. I just decided, let's get all this clutter off the right, move it to the left. And like the first time I did it, I was like, wow, that's perfect. Another thing I want to mention is like trying to guide your eye, because this I think was the hardest part, that I had to really sometimes get the design done, put it away, come back the next day and revisit and kind of rethink, because there's a lot going on, there's a lot of movement, and I'm trying to make it so that as you're going through this tutorial, you're not having to sort of look one way and then look another way to consume all of this information as you're learning the app. So one of the things I worked on was animation, and really trying to, because there's a lot of movement, really trying to make certain things pop quickly and certain things gently come into view. And so the types of things that are popping quickly are the feedback loops, the success loops. So you'll see that as I go through this, anything I'm doing that's engaging that, like anything that I'm doing that's a successful move, so I hit spacebar, that feedback is really quick and prompt. So pick a color, boom, it kind of comes in your eye really quickly. Same thing. And same thing here for the copied color here that just sits up on the upper right. Those success things, those like completed results, actions, those come up really quickly. They're snappy. But then you'll see there's that little pause before I then start with the next animation revealing the next thing you need to do. So when I hit G here, you'll see that that's snappy, and then this paused a little bit before it came in, and also that arrow here waited before it moved over to the next spot. Just look at that again. So think about this in terms of snappy success feedback loops and kind of very more gentle next step animations. Again, didn't really plan it that way. It just, I sort of evolved it, and that's what felt right. The arrow thing also was very clunky at first because it just sort of came in there. And again, it's kind of up here and your eyes are down here. So that was something I had to battle as well. But I like how it turned out. And also I like that it is sort of staying on the same line and just moving left to right positionally, as opposed to like fading out and fading in again. Because then it gives you this real sense of like keeping sort of like the periphery stable while something new is happening over here, if that makes sense. So building palette colors, you can see how all these things are moving. Again, not sure it's the perfect tutorial, the perfect visual, but where I'm at now, the balance feels pretty good. Another thing I worked on really hard, I do this with everything, is words. I try to keep these words really tight. And in general, having like, you'll notice that there's like a bold statement, and then when there's a, kind of like a hint, it's in a lighter weight font. I really wanted each step to have a very clear action, like here's what you're doing. And I try to keep it really tight because obviously with this like little wing effect I've got, especially as you get down here, I don't have as much liberty with space. And then there's little tiny details like originally I had colons on shortcut, so it'd be like shortcut :A, shortcut :F. I just got rid of the colon because it got a little too busy on the eye. But I don't think you lose any context here. You'll just see shortcut with the A key. I might even iterate this down and get rid of the word shortcut. I don't know yet, but this feels okay to me. So I think that's pretty much all I can think about with the tutorial here. So now let me talk a little bit about some of the earlier iterations of Pix. And I actually have them here. And I'll show you one that was the iteration just before this latest iteration. So it's pretty much identical to what you see here. I'll click on this here. So here's this iteration. The difference is just that they're flipped. This section here, the ASDFG section, is flipped with the kind of the mouse picker only advanced section. You can see down here I've got this stuff on the left, and then on the right is the more advanced stuff. I originally did it this way because when you click on the picker, you'll notice that the default way that the pop-up is positioned is it's right aligned, or I think that's right aligned. So it's against, so the right edge is the end here. So I kind of felt initially, you'll see an even earlier iteration here. I'll show you where I had the logo right underneath here, and sort of everything works its way back to the left. So same thing here. I eventually moved the logo to the left here, but I wanted sort of like the more important stuff closer to the icon, and then the more advanced stuff going towards the left. I end up making this sort of late switch. Not sure it's the right move, but again, one of the reasons I did it was because of the tutorial. Because now when I'm going through the tutorial, generally speaking, the way the tutorial now works is it goes from left to the right. So I kind of do all of these keyboard only actions, and then as I get to some of the other stuff, it then moves over to the right. So it had this nice flow to it. So really the reason I flipped this was because of the tutorial. But then as I looked at it, it just kind of also feels right too, to have the logo kind of on the left, and then like the primary actions with your keys on the left, and then the secondary actions on your right. And also your for right-handed people, or people that use the mouse with their right hand, which I actually think is even left-handed people I think use the mouse with their right hand, I think. But it also just makes sense because the right side is your mouse, the left side is your keyboard, so your eyes aren't having to sort of cross over where your hands are. So that's where I ended up with this design. So that really was the late change. Okay, so this is an earlier iteration that I actually had for quite a while. This whole design sort of changed at the tail end as I went through the tutorial. But let me show you that older design. You can see it's similar in many ways, but the hotkeys are different. So you can see the hotkeys in this case are does all of those advanced actions. So like the gradient, the copying of the colors, the saving of the palette. Those are all hotkey actions on your left hand, and then these other actions I actually had as up and down arrows, so you can go up and down to change the color format, and you can go left right to change the swatch on your palette, and you can hit semicolon to change the semicolon toggling. I didn't like that because as I evolved this product, the ergonomics became more and more part of the feature set, and so I felt like in some ways this looks a little simpler and looks a little cleaner, and I really like the way I designed these little icons here. They kind of look like keys with the letters underneath. Really, I expect most people to be using picks just to pick colors, and these are sort of secondary actions. I didn't want the home key hotkeys to be based on the secondary actions. I want those actions to just be mouse driven, and I really wanted you to use your fingers to do the kind of everyday things you're going to do, which is changing the color format, adding the semicolon, etc. So eventually I got rid of this and moved it to this design. Again, I think this earlier design is maybe simpler in some ways, but when I'm actually using the product, it feels more right to change the hotkeys to be this set of utilities and then have these other buttons be mouse driven secondary utilities. You can also see that I've changed the styling of these to not look like keys. These still look like keys, but then these are just sort of like buttons that look like you want to click on. So that's the main change. One of the other things I want to show you here was an early iteration of this little spacebar thing that now is this tiny little space keyword here. So let me delete these colors. Now watch this hit spacebar area as I pick different colors. You can see that it sort of fades out as I go. So by the time you get to that 7th, or in this case I allow you to do 8, the instruction goes away. So if I delete, you can see it kind of comes back in as I get rid of it. The idea here being like I really wanted to utilize the space really well. So give the user instructions in the beginning, but obviously as they're clicking through and getting to their 4th and 5th color, they know the idea that hit space bar instruction doesn't need to be there, and it just sort of fades out. I kind of like that, kind of miss not having it here, but I do also think that picks is something that you might use periodically, and when you come back to it, you might not remember how to engage the color picker. So if you came back to this, a week later and you have a full color palette, it's going to be, you might have to jog your memory and go, how do I actually engage the color picker? Whereas in this interface, you come back to it, you'll see this space with the color picker icon. I think that immediately makes you want to click space. So that's why I left it there. And then you can see here as you get to 7, so I could have added that 8th one, but then that would hide that space instruction. So I intentionally just got rid of one of the swatch colors. So now I can only do 7, just so I can keep that little instruction text always available, always visual. Again, tiny little design decisions, but I think that's the right move. And then one thing I did get rid of too, which I miss, is this little pulsating spacebar. So actually that jogs my memory now. The reason I had this spacebar sort of pulsate was because it hopefully would give you the idea that you hit spacebar to engage the color picker, because it kind of looks like a spacebar that's being pushed up and down. But again, it's one of those ideas that I feel like is cool, but I'm not sure it's that effective. This is not as cool, but I think it's a little more effective to have the word space in the eye picker or the eyedropper always there. So a lot of trade-offs that had to be made. There's always these little things that you think are really neat that you kind of want to stuff in there, but I think part of good design is having a little bit of restraint. Not everything you think is cool should stay there. Actually, if I show you this later reply I have, I did end up making these little icons. This was an SVG mouse icon, and this I just did by straight CSS. But I wanted to have like these things move as you got to that step. So once you hit like this shortcut A step, this A key would pulsate. So I thought that was really cool. But then the whole thing just started being too cluttered looking. I try to move these little pieces into the title area here, but again, it just felt too cluttered and it just wasn't adding any value. But I really liked the look of it. I really liked the look of this little keyboard. It was a fun thing to make in CSS. But sometimes you just have to dump things and then find another place for them at another time. Anyways, that's the entirety of Pix, both the color picker and the tutorial. I'm just fleshing out things here, but want to give you insight on how I design, how I'm thinking through things, and hopefully this was interesting.